Hi and welcome to a Good Chat Counselling videos. My name's Lucy and today I wanted to talk to you about a topic that can be a little bit hard for some people to deal with, which is disenfranchised grief. Now, disenfranchised grief is a type of grief that is hidden from society. It's stuff that we either feel or isn't acceptable for other people to talk about in society. There are lots of examples of disenfranchised grief. For example, you could have lost a friend or a distant friend or an online friend that most of your family never met, and so they don't understand that it was a real or genuine friendship because to them there's no connection there. It could be the loss of a teacher, it could even be the loss of a lover from an illicit affair. In those cases it can be really hard to grieve because the family doesn't know about it, your family doesn't know about it, you've got a partner, there's a complicated situation around it, but you've lost someone that was important to you. And you can't grieve. Now, grief is a really complex process, and sometimes we don't get over it, and this leads on to something called complicated grief, which requires a lot of therapy to move past. But to prevent it from becoming the complicated grief, we can often have a few simple processes in place that allow us to grieve. Nobody grieves the same way, so we're not going to be talking about grieving therapies, but I will say that if you have experienced a loss or grief and you aren't coping with it well, do reach out for help. That's exactly what counsellors are here for, here to help. Let's talk more about certain situations of disenfranchised grief and what actually led me to making this video. Recently, I watched a video from one of my favourite YouTube channels, Philosophy Tube. I'm sure heaps of you out there have actually heard of them because huge channel, absolutely brilliant content, highly worth having a look, and there will of course be links up above. Philosophy Tube recently came out as being trans. Very shortly after this occurred, a client of mine came to me and explained that their brother had also just come out as trans, and it was a real shock to the family. Now, I've gotten permission to talk about this too. So the brother had recently come out as trans. Now, before this, they weren't aware that there was any of this going on. The brother had been away at college, come back, and didn't look any different, but told everybody at a family meeting that they were now transitioning and that they'd gone from Justin to Kira. This caused a lot of shock in the family, and some people seemed to cope with it really well and it didn't really change anything, and some people it really deeply affected. Now, my client and her brother were close, but they'd not been so close for the last year or so while they'd been off at college and the pandemic had occurred and things happened. They just weren't as close anymore. But also they felt that their brother was pulling away from them and they couldn't understand why. So suddenly they've come back and they've said, "I'm not your brother, I'm your sister." The client came to me and said, "I don't know what's going on. I feel like they died." And unfortunately, that's kind of what happened. They have lost their brother. They've gained a sister, so there's absolutely that. And it got me to realising after watching a really brilliant, I have to say, please go and watch Philosophy Tube's Coming Out video. Wow, it is just the most eloquently put video on the trans topic that I have ever seen, or The Man That Never Was, I do believe. Please go and watch it, it is fantastic. But in that happened to be timing that was great because I actually got a bit of an insight into what's going on when you do transition. So I was able to pass that information on and recommend going and watching that video because Welcome Abigail. It was one of the best videos I've ever seen on YouTube. And in it, she describes how she's been putting on the act of Oliver for so long now and she felt so hollow and empty, and it was a character. She put on the voice and the clothes and she tried to be happy and she tried to live her life and it just never was. And I explained to my client that that's probably what her brother was going through, that for all the years that he was wearing a costume, he wasn't really himself. But outside of that, the real issue here was her feelings and her emotions. She felt like she'd lost her brother, and she had. When I was talking to her about processing these feelings, she was very much displaying all of the signs and symptoms of grief and loss. This is because she has lost. She feels that she can't access those memories and those shared experiences anymore because she feels guilty. She feels that she can't bring them up because she doesn't want to dead name and shame. Now, dead naming, for people that don't know, is when you refer to somebody by a name that they no longer use. It's something very disrespectful and you don't want to do it. But trans people are quite used to small transgressions and they will forgive you if you are genuinely making a mistake. So sometimes the occasional slip up, particularly from someone that's known them for a very long time pre-transition, is going to be very easily forgiven. I can assure you, it really will be. So that was something that I assured her of, and my client was still not convinced. She felt that she didn't know how to navigate this new relationship. And in dealing with this client and her situation, it made me realise that there are actually a lot of times in our life where we do have disenfranchised grief, and it isn't a topic that you see a lot on. It's something that I was only familiar with once I actually became a counsellor, and I realised that I've experienced disenfranchised grief in my life. Oh, it did a number on my headspace for many years until I got counselling myself to sort it out. And I don't think it was even a term when I did that, because it just was never brought up. It was never given a name. It was just grief and loss. But when you have that power of the name of the thing, you can fight the beast. And in this case, I'd like to give a couple of pointers to say that it's okay if you know someone that's transitioned. It's okay to grieve who they were. You're not celebrating who they are. You're just mourning the loss of somebody that you used to know. You're mourning the fact that they weren't happy and that they are no longer here. And that's okay. It's a part of the process. It's a part of the acceptance. Most trans people, I don't want to generalise, but they are quite reasoning. They've put in a lot of critical thought into who they are and to who they want to be, to come to the conclusion that they aren't being genuine to themselves. They've usually also gone through extensive counselling to know that there are going to be reactions in their life that they can't anticipate. Parents are losing one gender child and gaining another. This can be a huge adjustment, and in some families it doesn't happen. It's simply pushed away and never spoken about, and the child might be just disenfranchised completely, and that is tragic, and it doesn't need to happen. We just need to know what we're dealing with, and the name of the beast is disenfranchised grief. Now, it's okay to be confused in these situations. Not everybody's trans, so not everybody knows what's going on in a trans person's head. That's something very personal and that they'll likely to share with you or not as they choose fit. So maybe you'll never know. But one thing that you should know is that they are still there. You haven't lost the person. You've just lost the identity that they used to hold. And often you'll find that they weren't happy in that identity at all. And if you love that person, you'll learn to actually love who they are now without missing who they were too much, because the person's still there. They're still inside. It's still the same person. It's just a different identity expression. It's just more comfortable for them. And let's remember that at the end of the day, it is about that person. It's okay to grieve who they were, but you should be celebrating who they're becoming and who they are. And that's one of the keys to moving on and not being caught up in the grief so that it becomes complicated. We want to acknowledge who they were and the loss that we've had with losing our brother, but we want to celebrate the fact that we've gained a sister. And this is the key. It's finding a balance between those 2 points. And it's, as I said, it's okay to be confused. These are confusing times, there's confusing topics. These aren't things that everybody deals with on the norm. There's no class to go to learn these things. Well, maybe there is, but most people aren't taking it. It's also important to remember in this case, this disenfranchised grief is that while they've been a part of your story, and that's what you're mourning, is that that part of that story is over. And we have problems with closure as people. We're not built for it. We don't like endings. You are part of their story as well. And it is important for you to continue to be part of their story. And the chapters that you write in their book should always be good chapters, because the chapters that we write in other people's books, we should always aim to making them good chapters, ones that they like to reread. These are the memories that they live. So as much as they've been chapters in your book, you want to continue to be chapters in their book. It is about them. It is their journey. It's okay for you to feel that you've lost something, but it's even more important to remember that you've gained something. You've gained them, and you've gained them the opportunity to be happy in who they are. It's also important to remember the person is still there. This is their life. They haven't actually died. They haven't gone anywhere. They are there. So it's more important to celebrate their life than it is to mourn a death. There hasn't been a death. There's just been a change. That's all. But if you are feeling that you can't cope with it and you don't know how to process it, reach out for help. That's pretty much my go-to answer for a lot of these things. Is it's okay to not know how to deal with something. It's perfectly okay. No one expects you to pick up yourself and to carry on without a hitch. That's not how life works. We have hiccups along the way, and we have situations that are too complex for us to deal with without outside intervention. So please do reach out, find a counsellor if you can't find a good friend or someone that you can talk to about it. And remember, you can also talk to the trans person in your life and find out how they feel about things and talk to them about how you're feeling about it. They'll welcome that to you because they'll be able to explain it more. But if you don't feel that you can do that, or if you want to get your thoughts together before you do that, reach out and find a counsellor. Of course, shameless plug, we are available 24/7, so all our contact details will be down the bottom. But that's not what the video was about. These videos are always about information for people. So I hope that that helped with something. And I hope that maybe this helps someone understand a little bit more about disenfranchised grief when it comes to the trans community. It's okay to be confused. It's okay to be an emotional roller coaster at this time, as long as you move on from it. Thank you for joining me today. I hope that you found this informative. So this is Lucy from A Good Chat, and I hope this was a good chat. Bye for now.